So, hey everyone, 7:05, I'm Ron Cavanaugh, Executive Director of the Literary Freedom Project. We are a Bronx-based nonprofit that focuses on doing literary programs that support our culture and our histories of primarily Black and Latino people in the Bronx. But since the pandemic, we are now open to the world. So we've had people as far as South Africa and as close as Queens join us, and we appreciate them equally. Tonight we're going to be discussing, Marizol and Selenis Leyva's memoir, My Sister. I'm just trying to let a few more people in. And our partner, so a lot of people who join the book club come from different places. And one of the places they come from is Casita Maria. They're our partner in presenting these book clubs. We appreciate them, all the energy and diversity that they bring, not just to the book club, but also to their community. So Gail Heidel from Casita Maria is here. She will say a few words. And I do see that Selenis and Marizol is here, so we do not have to send anyone looking for them. Gail, you want to say a few words?
Yes, hi everybody. Thank you, Ron. So I'm Gail Heidel. I'm the Director of Creative Arts Programs at Casita Maria Center for Arts and Education, and we are located in the Hunts Point neighborhood of the South Bronx. And normally in non-COVID times, this book club would be taking place in person on our 6th floor in our gallery, and you'd be surrounded by artwork. And we would hope that the artwork would help inform your conversation as well as the books that you're reading. So one of the things that we do at Casita is we paint a beautiful mural on the front of our building to try to inspire the young people that come through our doors every day to either attend the middle school and high school that's in our building, or to attend after school programming. So we have after school for K through 12. We serve about 1,000 young people. And the mural that we painted last summer was focusing on success and creativity. And we selected 8 different Bronxites that we wanted to, celebrate and showcase as a way for our young people to get excited about the arts. And so one of the people that we celebrated was Selenis, and you can see her right behind me here. And Selenis reached out to us on social media, and we were so thrilled to hear from her. And so we started a conversation, and we decided to feature her book, My Sister, which she wrote with her sister, Marizol. And we wanted to feature it in the book club. And then we also were able to invite them here tonight to speak to you all. So I'm going to pass it over to Ron to start a conversation with Selenis and Marizol. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you both to Selenis and Marizol. We have been thoroughly enjoying this book. Like it's kind of caught me off guard how many directions the book has taken us in. And we all appreciate, one, your openness and honesty in writing this book, which is oftentimes sort of like the base of our conversation, just how honest and open you both are to telling your stories. So we definitely appreciate that you've decided to put this in sort of a joint memoir, because even though it's about Marizol's transition, it's really about how it affects the entire family. So we appreciate this book. I want to take a moment to introduce Brandon Janice. Brandon is the facilitator of the book club. So I've said all I'm going to say for the evening, except for when I have some questions. Brandon will be leading the conversation. Of course, we want everyone to have questions. All the questions that we've been asking every week. I want you guys to, jump in and join the conversation. So, Brandon, take it away.
Thank you, Ron, so much. And
Like Ron said, we have been really enjoying this book. The conversations that we've been having have been so rich and so vulnerable, much like the text is, very honest, very real. And I usually do lead the conversation, but there are about 30 people here, and I would actually like to kind of just get us started and open us up with questions. If anyone, especially who has been following us along, has a question that they like to start the group off with, jump right in. If I don't hear any voice in maybe like a few seconds, then I'll just jump in. But I really would like to kind of just jump in with questions from the audience.
I'll get the party started if nobody.
I think Sherry's actually raising her hand, literally.
Okay, who's speaking?
Go ahead, Sherry. Unmute yourself.
Oh, cool.
I'm not sure. Hi, Selenis. This question is for you. Knowing now what you know and understanding that people are very diverse, what would you have done differently if you would have had the opportunity to do so back then when you guys were teenagers?
What would I think that I would have, I mean, I was always very vocal and very, I protected Marisol a lot from the very beginning, as you read in the book. I think that I would have, sometimes I would act maybe out of frustration and it would turn into anger. And when you try to teach people through anger, right, they shut down. I didn't have all the tools. I didn't have the vocabulary. I didn't have the research. I didn't know what I know now. If I knew that then, I think I would have definitely have taken more of an educational perspective on it, not so much combative, you know what I mean? Because it's quite frustrating when you love someone and you see them being attacked or you see the unfairness. So I think that sometimes I would lash out, you know, shut that person down, instead of perhaps that would have been a great learning opportunity, teaching opportunity for me to sit and have dialogue. Because we can disagree so much in life about everything, and we're experiencing it more than ever today, right? Racially and in every area of our lives. But I feel that when we stop and we listen and we truly have a dialogue is when you're able to really make change. So I think that I would have opened myself a bit more to hearing the other opposing, you know, person or the ideals, to really open up conversation. I think that would have been key during some of those pretty high emotional moments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Anna. And you don't have to wait to be called on. Just, you know, jump in like you usually do.
I didn't want to interrupt anyone else. My question is for both of you. What motivated you to do this together? What drove you to share your story with everyone, with the world?
Hello, Anna Marie. So for me and my sister, I think I can answer this question for my sister as well, because we both had the agreement on why we should do this book. I mean, my sister came to me one day and said, what do you feel about writing a book? And so it was one of those things that I had to like marinate in my head, in my soul, in my energy to like, is this something do I want to do? And when I had the time to think about it, I began to think about all my brothers and sisters who identify as trans or is part of my community and doesn't have a voice where they can see themselves, or a book where they can read on their experiences that we experience and all of these things that we go through. And so I felt like, wow, who gets an opportunity like this to write a book, and specifically about the experience, who gets that opportunity, right? So I felt like I had the responsibility, not only for myself, but for my community, to continue to share our stories, continue to educate, and be vulnerable so people can be able to understand our lives and our experience. So for me, that was like the main thing, to represent my community in a positive light.
Right.
And I think for me, I just want to piggyback on what Marisol is saying. it was important to show real support. It was important as a cis woman, right, as her sister, to show support, because more often than not, we have people saying, yeah, we support you. And then once a year, we're going to support trans lives or the LGBTQ plus community. But here I was given this amazing platform that I'm so grateful for, right? Because of what I love to do. And I found success in it. So here I have a platform. Why not use it, right? Not only for myself, from the betterment of myself and my family, but the betterment of our community, the betterment of communities in general. And because I had been almost like front row and center to Marizol's struggles from day one, I knew that it was key as a cis woman to join hands with my sister, my transgender sister, and say, let's stop, let's have a conversation, let's open up the dialogue, let's see how we really are more alike than we are different. And so I felt a huge responsibility, not only to my sister, but honestly, just in general to the community.
Thank you. That's really powerful.
Thank you.
That's really powerful.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna Marie. Thank you guys so much. I just want to say, like, Marizol and I are, before we even continued, we are so grateful that this love and this support is coming from our community, from our home base. I appreciate each and every one of you for supporting our book, for supporting Marizol, for supporting this journey, and for, having this conversation. Like I said earlier, I think that through conversation, anything is really possible, and that's the best way to educate each other. So, gracias.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, can I go ahead and ask a question?
Hi.
Hi, my name is Liliana. I'm super excited to actually meet both of you. This is truly an inspiring story. And then, like everyone has said, like it really has spiked a lot of conversation to learn about the LGBTQ plus community. And, it's truly like very enlightening for us, especially people from our community, to talk about this. But my question is actually a follow-up from your previous question, but I just really wanted to know what was it like to like see your sister perspective, like writing this book, and to see and learn like some of the things that you probably didn't know. And this is for both of you, Marizol and Selenis. Like, I really want to know, what was it like writing a book with your sister and like learning things that you probably didn't know and, finding out things. So thank you.
Jess, do you want to take that first, or you want me to go?
You can go.
Okay, so for me, it's been a year since our book came out today, and it still feels like it was yesterday. So all of the emotions are still marinating. I'm still processing them. So it's like, the beginning of writing our book, and then here we are in this space. It's always like reliving that all over again. And so I will say that it wasn't an easy journey. I mean, when you put yourself in a vulnerable space to let the world to read your story, you really have to start to like de-stress and like really just put all of the things that that are a experience for so many, but they're not often talked about. And so I felt like, the process was really intense for me, because there was moments where I had to relive many situations for myself that were really hard, but as well, it was also a positive light in this project with me and my sister, because I finally like started a healing process for myself. I didn't realize how much power I had in myself and resilience until I really started like I discovered myself so much more in this book and in the process, and even after. So it's been a beautiful journey. I've definitely learned a lot of things about my sister that I didn't know. And, it made us a lot more closer. I would say that for sure, because, there were things that she was going through, and I knew she was going through things specifically early on into our book. I mean, as a young teenager, around like 20, I would say like was 20. And that moment, I knew she was going through some things, but I just didn't know what it was exactly. And I didn't even want to ask because I already had things that I was going through. And again, she was my biggest supporter and always there to stand up for me. And so she had her own things to deal with, and then myself. So I didn't want to like put more baggage over her, knowing that there was something I just didn't know, because I just felt like her energy as there's something wrong with her. I don't know what's going on. And it made me sad as well. So to know later on down the road when we wrote this book, to know what it was, it was heartbreaking, but it definitely brought us so much closer. And not only that, it became a beautiful story where my sister and I are helping others out there who might see themselves in us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that for me, there were a lot of things, obviously, like Marisol said, we were going through different things at the same time. And it was hard to write this book. It was not easy. And I remember telling Marisol before we started writing, I said, you got to get into therapy. I said, because we are going to start unleashing and unveiling and peeling back on a lot of things that we may not be ready for. And I was really right, Marisol. I was like, you better get into therapy because I don't want to hear it later on.
It was the best thing I ever done.
Like, I was just like hounding her to start therapy before we started the writing process, because I knew, even though I didn't know a lot of the things that later on came out during our writing sessions, I knew that it was going to be a moment of purging, you know, and a moment of reliving things. And little did I know the extent of the things that Marisol had kept to herself for years. It was hard. It was a really hard process. I think I went through feeling sadness, anger, and a lot of guilt. I felt like I should have done more. I should have been there more. You know, why didn't I see the signs? What could I have done? So at the same time, I would say that in the beginning of writing the book, it was a moment of a lot of pain, to realize that someone that you love so much has had to deal with so many things and carry so many secrets and burdens. And but then by the end, I felt that it was liberating. It was a moment of Marisol being able to share her experience, and at the same time, I think that that has made her stronger, given her strength in finding that voice. And for me, I think it healed me in the sense that I felt guilt for not always being there. So this book, really, the journey of writing this book up until now, and being so honest with it, I think that has changed us forever and has made us closer and just more aware of everyone. You know, it's not just about us, the individuals. There's so many people who are living through these experiences.
I have a question. It's a comment and a question. I commend both of you, as we would say, for putting your business in the street. It takes a lot to put yourself out there and expose yourself to the world.
Yeah.
And for people to read about things about you that they've never known before. And I'm sure it came from deep within your soul to put that out there to the world. Mm-hmm. My question is for Marizol, but for really both of you, how accepting was your family, your entire family, to this whole transitioning process for Marizol, and what did you guys go through with the family in particular?
I'm so sorry. Can you repeat? You kind of got caught up in the beginning of the question, Leyva.
How accepting was your family, your entire mm-hmm. family, with the transition, and what kind of struggles did you deal with your family?
For me, you often hear about stories that like families aren't accepting of their trans siblings or daughter or son or someone who might identify as gay or bisexual. You often hear the stories of they're not accepting their child. But for me, it was a tad different, even though like I felt like at one point I was not going to be accepted. But the thing is, that came from a place where my family did not know the language. They weren't educated on trans people. They knew nothing about trans people. There was only the stigma of who trans people was, and it was made fun of. And so that kept me away from, you know, being vocal with my feelings and my emotions. So it was really a learning experience through my transition, where me and my sister remained a relationship with each other, and she was the one going back to the family, pretty much, you know, like letting them know everything that I'm letting her know through my journey and my transition. So it was like pretty much like a teamwork kind of thing, and she played like the mediator and was just like putting them on board to what I was going through and the transition that I was going through as well.
And it wasn't easy. I mean, you know, I can't sit here and say that it was perfect, because then I would not be authentic to what we went through. And I think that where we are now, it's because of growth, because of education, because of awkward conversations, because of checking people. You know, there are still people in our extended family that, you know, every once in a while you got to check. You know, and these people, you know, I, for one, have stopped real communication with them, because it's almost like, how many times do I have to try to tell you, you know, or try to teach you? After a while, I do believe that you have to walk away. There's certain people that you need to just walk away in order to conserve your energy, emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being. So, but having said that, I would say that in our immediate family, specifically our parents, my father is a Cuban man from Cuba, you know, my mother is a Dominican woman, Catholic. I mean, all of those things put together could equal a perfect storm, you know, as far as acceptance and as far as gender roles, et cetera, et cetera. But here you had these two beautiful human beings that really, really got nitty gritty with it. And at the end, we're like, no, this is my child. This is my daughter. I love her. I'm going to protect her. I am going to correct people. You know, there's nothing as cute as seeing my mother correct people, you know, when they use the wrong pronoun, because my mother's very proper, so she finds a way to do it. And there's nothing more satisfying than seeing that growth. Are there people still in our family, not so much in our immediate circle, but extended, that still have a hard time? Absolutely, sure. But I think they are not in the majority. When I say they, it could just be like one person or two people that still are caught up in, you know, whatever mentality. But as far as our family, it was hard. It was not easy. I had to be the mediator, like Marisol says, and most of the time I was like, you know, being pulled in two different directions, with the love and respect that I have for my family and the love and respect that I have for my sister, and finding ways of bringing them together. And thankfully it happened, and here we are.
That's amazing, because I know for me, growing up in the South Bronx in public housing, we had a handful of men or young boys back then who came out to their parents, two of which were Hispanic, and their parents threw them in the street. And that's how they got down years ago. They just couldn't accept the fact that that's who their children were. And it was like, nope, absolutely not. You gotta go. And these kids were homeless.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately, that's what you see in the community. More and more people who were shunned by their families and thrown out. And so that's the other importance of writing this book, is to show another narrative, is to introduce another type of narrative. It's like, no, you don't have to do that. Just because everybody else threw out their kids, what about this? You know what I mean? What about a family that didn't really understand it, didn't really get it, but worked hard to get it, to understand it, not to just accept it, but to really fully engage in this person's life. So that was the main point of creating a book or writing a book and telling our story, because it was important to show another narrative and say it doesn't always have to be, especially for Black and brown folks.
Yes.
It doesn't always have to be so rigid. So, you know, and so I'm hoping, we are hoping, Marisol and I, we talk about this all the time, how even if one person, if it changed the life of one person, that already did more than we could have imagined. And my cat is also in the book club.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a question. My name is Latisha. Very nice to speak with both of you. I'm very excited. Hello. So in the beginning of the book, and this is kind of for both of you. In the beginning of the book, Selenis, you talked about colorism in the Latinx community, which is also quite prominent in the Black community. And last week in the club, we talked about how trans people experience similar discrimination within the LGBTQ community, which you obviously wrote about. So I want to ask both of you, from your perspectives, has the release of this book changed any of those perspectives, not only in regard to discrimination against trans people within the LGBTQ community, but also looking at colorism a little bit differently? Has it brought up those topics, and have people acknowledged that they were kind of narrow-minded in their thinking?
I think that, you know, we're in a place where a lot of conversations are being had, and these topics, colorism and discrimination and racism, all of these conversations are being brought up. Whether you like it or not, we're having them, and that's the key here. So I think that it's whoever that read the book, I feel like they are able to see that this is a real thing, and this is things that are happening within our communities, and we need to realize that, yeah, I'm part of the LGBT community as well, but it doesn't take away from the fact that I'm still an Afro-Latina, I'm still Black. And so a lot of the conversations that I find myself in different like clubhouses and Instagram and Zoom calls, like you hear people having these things, specifically the Black and brown heterosexual community, where they feel like, no, you need to have your own thing. You need to have your own thing. And I just want them to read this book to see that, yeah, we're a part of this community, but it doesn't take away that you're still my brother and you're still my sister. And so we just have a different experience in life. So I think that the more the book gets out there, the more people will be understanding. I think that people definitely have been having the conversations about colorism and discrimination and racism. I think we're in the right track. And the duty here is not just only me and my sister. There's so many other people as well that are doing the work as well, putting their stories out there. And we got to continue to do that so the conversations can continue to flow.
I think that, yes, we are living in a time, obviously, where there are more discussions being had about colorism and you know, diversity and within each group. I have found, as an Afro-Latina, the discussions to get kind of heated, because there seems to be, now that we're all talking about it, almost like a color chart on, you know, the Afro-Latinidad and what is considered Afro enough or not enough. And I think that, again, the more conversations we have about it, the better it is. But it has been a little bit frustrating for me to be a part of those different dialogues, because I find myself having to defend my Afro-Latinidad, just like Marizol has to defend her, you know, who she is. I have found in the last, you know, probably year or so, having to defend. You know, I've been told by other Afro-Latinas that maybe I didn't have it as hard as someone else who was darker skinned than me. And I'm like, I beg to differ. You know, when I walk into a room, they see a person of color, you know, and that is it. And my struggle in Hollywood for 20 years, 20 plus years, continues to be a struggle. So the dialogue is there, which is great. And with Marizol, what I did find during this time of the book coming out, specifically like during, gosh, remember Marizol, there was one particular interviewer who said to Marizol, and I had to check her, said to Marizol, like, you know, almost like, you're so beautiful and attractive, you know, that must make it easier because some trans people don't look the part. And I remember, like, it was like the record screeched, like it scratched at that moment. And right? And I had to, you know, I had to say, no, we're not going to do that. this is not what this is about. This book is about educating everyone, and we are not going to sit here and have a chart on who passes to be a trans woman or a trans man or not. So the conversations are heated, but they're conversations, which again is a wonderful opportunity to educate people. The book is opening dialogue, so that's a great thing. But I do believe that we still have a lot of work to do in the realm of what is Afro-Latinidad, what it means to be a trans Afro woman, what it means to be a cis Afro woman. So it's been quite challenging, actually. One of the things that have come up, and how you have to stop and check people and use it as an opportunity to educate.
Can I actually ask Marizol to expand a little bit on that? There was one point in the book where I think you were explaining how you had just met Josh, and he had said something like, you don't look transgender, he didn't see you as a transgender, and you almost felt flattered. You were like, actually at the time I felt flattered, but now I think about those comments differently. Can I ask you to expand a little bit on that?
What was the last part you said? I'm sorry.
Can I ask you to expand a little bit on that when you say?
So back then, you know, what I learned from my experience as a woman and just who I am, because, you know, like for most of my time, I had to oppress myself. And I didn't even know what that looked like. I just knew that I saw the women in my family on how they treated themselves and how they act and the characteristics and the way they were so poised. But it wasn't until after the whole entire relationship that I realized that I don't need a man to tell me, oh, you're so passive, or you're so this, or you're so beautiful, to validate myself, to make me feel that I can pass in this world, in society, and be able to be accepted. So I feel like for most trans people in the beginning stages of our transitions, we feel that we need that validation, we need that acceptance, so we go out of our way to be able to coexist in the normal society, which is my society as well, but you know, a lot of people don't know that. But you know, now looking back at it, then you know, I just learned a lot of worth of myself and my womanhood, and knowing that I don't need to have this norm of what people expect me to be as a woman, or this beautiful person, or like, no, I don't need to be that. I am who I am, and I just learned not to have validation, to get validations from men specifically, because the men that who are attracted to us, they're not looking at us that way, like deeply, and they're that's a whole nother conversation. But
take your time. This is an open, this is a safe space, girl. Take your time. But you know, I'll tell you why I asked you that. I don't mean to cut you off, but this is why I asked that, because when I read that section, I thought, I think I was thinking like you, I guess, up until that part of the book where I was thinking like, well, she's a woman, not a trans woman. And then I swear, once I read that part, I was like, oh wait, when I say that, I'm stripping her, right, of all of the very rich, very full, very real experiences that she has had as a trans woman that I don't know anything about. So when I tried to, you know, I guess for a while, this is a new thought I'm having and I'm going to share it with y'all, but I guess for a while I was thinking like, oh, if I just take the trans part off and say that she's a woman, she's with me, she's by my side, I'm almost trying to validate your experience more in my mind, right? Rather than listening to your experience as a whole, which is its own experience and unique and nothing that I need to immediately understand. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think Marisol, I'm sorry, like I think that was also me thinking back, the conversations about transgender people, right, is happening more now than ever. You know, I would say maybe in the last 5 years, really like real conversations, you know, real faces, you're really hearing stories, you're really seeing stories and seeing people in it. And whereas before it was almost as, well, Marisol, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's almost like, well, if I can pass, I will be accepted. I will be accepted, I'll be loved, and there'll be a place for me. So it's like, well, I have to be that, and also for safety, right? Because again, now you can say, I'm a trans woman or I'm a trans man. 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago, we would say that. You know what I mean? Not that it's perfect today. I'm not saying that by any means, but I'm saying that there's more support and dialogue about it today than years ago, where before it was like, no, you needed to pass. You needed to pass, not so much even for like yourself, well, for yourself, but for others. You know, the idea of being attacked, right? Of being found out. It's so layered, but I'm so grateful for people like Marizol, you know, for so many people right now in the industry that are fully out and celebrated for who they are. It's a wonderful time, I think, to continue this kind of growth. But I do feel that you're absolutely right, and I love this question, because I feel like, yeah, Marizol can attest to it more than me, but this was just like, you know, my brain just exploding right now.
No, I love that you said that, sis, because, you know, what people don't realize, trans people, they have to survive in every aspect in their lives, whether it's like surviving in the sense of protecting themselves for safety. And so, like my sister said, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, like we had to live in selves, because the conversations weren't being had, the representation, the visibility was not there. It was still represented in a negative light. And so we had to protect ourselves in survival mode at all aspects, in all corners of our lives. And can you imagine that that's a lot to take on? And then to try to date and to live an authentic life and go after your dreams and career, it's just like, how when you don't have the tools and the resources to do so. But the beauty of it now is that we're a decade later, you know, the conversations are being had. We still have a long way to go, but it's the process, and we have to start from somewhere. We definitely did. So I'm thankful for that.
My name is Hi, my name is Willie. Great conversations that we've had the past couple of weeks, and definitely tonight. Selenis, I loved your work in Orange is the New Black. Loved you. And Marizol, thank you for both of you. Thank you for being brave and sharing your story and your truths. I work with elementary age and middle school age children and some who identify as trans. And I'm interested in, Marizol, what would you tell, because you were very candid in discussing like the bullying and all of that, what would you tell your younger self at the time? Or what would you want someone to know about you when you were like that age, who could possibly help you, assist you, be an advocate, or be an ally?
I think what I would have changed back then when I was a younger child is that a lot of these administrations and education systems have some type of like LGBTQ members where they can be able to train the staff or have some type of like group where people can come, like counseling or something, where they can feel comfortable enough, like a safe space for them to express what they're feeling. And also I think what's important too is to have like some type of, you see how we have like sex educational classes and stuff like that. I think also teaching about LGBTQ plus community and trans people is also important, because we still today have this stigma of who trans people are. And I would have liked that to have done back then, because it would have prevented a lot of the bullying. It would have prevented a lot of the isolation that I had during my school years. So I would have liked that back then.
That's a great question, Willie. Really great question. And I think that, you know, Marizol and I've talked about this a lot. I think that it also, you know, the education system, I mean, is so flawed in this country. It just is. Books that are so ancient. We have to kind of revamp the education system big time. And one of them is, like Marizol says, introducing at a very young age the idea, taking away this idea that there are only two sexes, you know, taking away that notion and having children become more educated and not going by science also. You know, there's science to prove that, you know, Marizol is not, it was not a fetish that she just decided one day, oh, this is what I want to become, or this is, no, they're like proven scientific researches that are out there that I would love to introduce the educational system. You know, don't get me started about, you know, let's start educating, like not devote just one chapter to like the civil rights movement, and you know, let's open it up to real education and include you know, trans people and LGBTQ plus people for sure.
Thank you for that, Selenis, because we had a previous discussion towards the beginning where we were kind of talking about, you know, that we have to get this idea out of our minds where we're trying to find the reason why someone is trans, or why, you know, trying to prove it or pathologize it.
Or to prove it wrong. It's like, no, it can't be, you know. And I think that, you know, I mean, if anything, if we have learned anything during, especially this last year during this pandemic, right, where we've all been shut down. I know I've had a lot of time to think. I would hope a lot of us have had a lot of time to think and regroup and recharge. Unfortunately, not everyone has used it productively, but could you imagine if we really started to dismantle these ideas that we have been fed that really technically do not work? You know, that they were created specifically to keep us all in line, you know, and now it's like we're all questioning a lot of things. We're questioning society, we're questioning the norm, we're questioning. And I think this is a wonderful time. It's like, I'm excited about this time. As scary as it is, I do feel that this is the time to start dismantling these really dinosaur-ish ideas, these caveman ideas that were set up to keep us all in line and in check, you know. So it starts in the educational system. So if you work with kids, you know, I would say, you know, have these conversations. I don't know, fight with the Board of Education to open up more inclusive, you know, dialogue.
Samantha, will you go ahead and ask your question? I know you've been waiting for a while. Oh, maybe she left.
Oh no!
Does anyone else have?
I'm here. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't find unmute. Yeah, so Selenis talked a little bit in the book. Also, sorry, let me start off with thank you guys for coming. Oh, this is great. I'm actually a little starstruck. Selenis talked a little bit about during Marizol's transition that she felt kind of like a mourning, but also some guilt because she knew, you know, that her sister was always there and that, you know, she was always going to have that person, that person didn't go anywhere. As someone also dealing with someone who has a trans individual in their family, I just wanted to know how you dealt with like the guilt, with like wanting to accept them and know who they are, but also still feeling, you know, grief, I guess you could call it, for like not having that person who you thought you had.
Yeah, you know, I think that it's important to be honest with oneself, you know, and say, you know, I'm having a hard time. I'm mourning this person. Obviously now I know I was mourning the idea of literally physically losing someone where this person, Marizol, was always there, you know. And in the book, I describe how when I looked into Marizol's eyes, I saw my person. I saw the soul of the person that I was sitting here thinking that I was going to lose. Mm-hmm. So it was for me a moment of like an aha moment. And you're like, oh my goodness, no, I haven't lost her. If anything, I see her more clearly than ever. You know, when I was able to really look at her, and for the first time I saw joy. For the first time I saw a person who was being seen, you know? And so for me, I do not feel shameful, and I don't think anyone should feel shameful to say, I feel like there's a mourning, because that's very honest. That's a very honest conversation. Be like, I feel like there's a mourning, because if you deny that feeling, it's gonna come back and it's gonna keep haunting you. So no, be honest about it and be like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? I remember thinking, so what if all our pictures, our baby pictures and this and all these memories, I still have those memories. You know what I mean? I still have them. And now they mean more than ever, because finally that soul, that person is at peace. Where before this soul, this person, my loved one, my sister, was not at peace, you know? So the mourning process is real. I think we should honor that. And if you have to cry it out, you cry it out. If you have to talk about it, you talk about it. But ultimately, trust me when I tell you that when you stop and you look at that person, they're there. They're there. They never left.
Thank you. And one just follow-up question. Also, as a Dominican woman, is there any guidance? I know that, you know, every situation is different, every family is different, but just in, you know, very traditional, very Catholic families have a hard time just accepting anything that's not what they grew up knowing. And so like having these conversations with them and being able to like acknowledge that, you know, there may be, unfortunately, some family members that may be too old or just maybe just not ready to kind of, but still wanting to be, I guess, faithful, you know, to your family, but also like to your sister at the same time, and be like, I don't want to have to choose because I have family members who are not accepting, but I also don't want to be or surround myself or, you know, be with people who are not going to respect, you know, how, you know, my trans family members live.
Yeah.
And
it's hard. It's hard because, like you said, you know, there are people in our lives that are, like you said, maybe older, you know. I mean, how much can you change, you know, someone who's like 88 or 90 and they're like, nope, this is the way it is, you know. I still say the dialogue is important. I still say bring it up. I still say, you know, the book is in Spanish also. Drop it off at somebody's, you know.
Oh my God, is it? That's amazing.
Yes, it's in Spanish. So drop it off in somebody's, you know, living room. Oops, you know, or happy birthday, Merry Christmas. You know, you need to read this. And because I do feel we should want to educate our loved ones, right, Marisol? We should want to educate. But there comes a time, and I've told this to Marisol a lot, we've talked about this a lot, there comes a time where in order to protect yourself and your space and your mental health, sometimes you gotta walk away. Sometimes you just have to walk away in order to stay healthy. Because if I'm drowning, I can't, you know, I can't help the other person's drowning. So sometimes you have to be like, listen, I sent you so many lifesavers. I took you to swimming classes. I did it all. And you did not want to take on this response. So I'm going to have to bow down and exit. You know, for older people in your family, you know, sometimes you have like a great grandmother or grandmother. I think the best way to do is have the dialogue, don't push too much, and check them. You know, if abuela says something crazy, you know, at Thanksgiving, you know, check her. Abuela, you know, no, acuérdate, you know, we had this conversation, remember. You know, I think that if we continue to do those kinds of things, there is more impact than trying to shove it down someone's throat, you know, forcefully. So little by little, you can get somewhere.
Thank you. Thank you.
I do have a question, and it kind of follows up on what you just said about sort of being at your breaking point. There's a part of the book where it feels like you reach that point. There's a realization that your career, you Selenis, your career isn't going in the direction you want it to go. Marisol isn't respecting your home, and you have to take a stand. And that's when you take her to the home in Brooklyn. And I was just wondering, I know sometimes it's hard to revisit emotions, but it felt visceral. Like I felt like you were at your breaking point and you could take no more from any direction. Even your marriage wasn't as healthy as it should have been. Yeah. Can you just speak about that point in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so interesting that you bring this up, right? Because one of the points of the book that I was like, I would like to read out loud, right? It's one of those moments. So I just wanted and then we could, you know, follow up on it, because I think it even today, reading it, I was like, oh wow, this was a moment. So
just really quickly, are you reading from the book?
Yes.
It would be great if we could follow along. What page should we
Yes.
go?
Okay, so I am looking at page 152.
Okay, so if you have the book, go ahead and go to page 152. Where are we at the very top?
At the very bottom,
Okay.
we had to hurry inside.
Sounds great.
Okay. We had to hurry to get inside of the huge building. It was nighttime. We had to be there before curfew. We got in the elevator, and again, it was all silence. The door opened up to this kind of loft space, and I could see a kitchen right away. It was big and clean, very clean. The space was inviting, and I thought, this is somebody's home. I felt okay leaving her in a place like this. But as I went down the elevator and out the door, it was getting harder and harder to breathe. I wanted to scream. No, I needed to scream. She doesn't belong here. She has a family. I thought about turning back and getting her, bringing her home. Instead, I sat in the car for a long time, just me and Puka. And finally I heard it, like thunder. The dam broke. I was crying hard. The passenger seat was empty, and drops of rain pounded against my windshield. I called my brother Tony and I told him what I had done, how I had left Marisol at this place, how horrible, how I felt guilty, horrible. I'm a bad person, I said. I'm a bad sister. Tony is not big on words, but then he said to me what I had been saying to Marisol. It's gonna be good. This is what she needs. It's time for her to be on her own, and it's gonna be good. You'll see. And I remember saying over and over, I think I'm a bad person. I think I failed her. No, Tony insisted. It's gonna be good. That moment is still, that moment is still hard because it was the first time that I felt I'm turning my back on my sister. But looking back now, that moment changed her life forever in the best way possible. And it was tough love. You know, it needed to happen. I needed to say enough is enough. Because if I continued to coddle her, right? If I continued to baby her and protect her, she would not be the Marisol that we have today. The warrior, you know, the survivor.
Yeah, you know, as a reader, and I wrote this in the book when I read that part. As a reader, I needed that tough love. You see what I'm saying? As a reader, watching this story unfold the way it's been unfolding for the last 152 pages, Marisol's behavior, coupled with your own struggles, I needed that. Like, I needed that. As a reader, I needed the break, you know, I needed the break. I needed the evolution, right? I needed to get to the next step. So, and I think I can speak on behalf of a lot of people in this book club who have been here to the end, like, that was needed, you know. It was, a lot of our conversations actually have been, and correct me if I'm wrong, y'all, but a lot of our conversations have kind of been surrounding this moment. So it's so funny that you read this. This is the moment that we had all been, no offense, Marizol, we love you.
No, it's I'm
here. Like, we are here.
I'm here smiling because the part that I choose to read for tonight's book club is chapter actually 19. So right after.
Should we go back to back and go ahead and have you read that? I think we should. What page are you on, Marizol?
So basically it's going, like, literally my sister started we had at 152, and then the next page is 153. And then the next chapter, I decided I was going to read that part. So it's so crazy. Like, me and my sister didn't talk about what part of the book we were going to read. We just had the choices from chapters, I believe, 18 to 25. So it's really crazy how this is the part that she picks and the question that you asked. And then It's just all aligning with each other.
This is beautiful. So you're on page 153.
You guys want me to read from page 153?
Oh, 153, okay.
Is that what you had picked? Yeah.
Lights out, yeah, because then
Yes.
it goes into more detail on part 3, chapter 19.
Okay, perfect. Whenever you're ready, Marizol.
Okay. Lights out was at 10 o'clock sharp, and I was relieved to finally have a structure to my day. When I laid my head on my pillow that night, I remember a conversation Mommy and I had after everyone found out that it was me who took the money. She told me that she forgave me, and she wasn't angry about what I had done. I remember us talking about what was to come with the police and the courts, and she said to me, "It will be okay, but always pray. Just always pray." And that night, in my new bed at Alley for Name, I prayed. I prayed about what I wanted to get out of this experience, what I had come to the center for. I prayed about everything that had happened in my life, about what I could do to change everything I'd done. How could I become a better person, a better version of myself? I wanted to do right, to make changes in my life and have my family forgive me and accept me for who I was. I asked God to forgive me and to keep me strong. Mommy's voice was like a refrain in my head. Do good, be strong, always pray. And I promised to do just that. As I prayed, I started to tear up, but it wasn't of sadness or fear. It was out of relief. I'm finally in a place in my life where I had hope. There will be no more hiding Marizol from my family. No more excluding my truth. This, I decided, was the beginning. Part 3, Marizol. Chapter 19, Marizol. When I woke up the next morning at the Alley Forney Center, I had a smile on my face. I felt calm and reassured, hopeful even. Something told me that I was going to be good and that this was a space where I'd find people who wouldn't judge me. I was on a new journey and being guided by a brand new light finally. I was at peace with myself. With all that I had done, with all that had gone down with my family, with everything in my life, I had the chance to change my life together. And I was going to better myself. I wanted to take over the world and I didn't want to waste any time. What's my task for the day, I thought. I was ready to do what needed to be done, to get my name changed, to apply for government assistance, to look for a job. Normally, it took me a few days after meeting someone new to feel comfortable enough to open up and show me the real me. But that morning, after I got out of bed and showered, I put my feminine clothes. As I stood by the mirror to do my makeup and my hair, Miss Kane approached me. I waited nervously, hoping that she wasn't going to call me by my birth name like she had the night before. I always dream moments like these, whether I went to appointments or when I was running errands at government office, I would write down Marizol. I would write down Marizol when I could. But if anyone ever looked at my ID, at my official papers, they would always call out my birth name. These moments were not only degrading and embarrassing, but also drew attention to me and made me feel unsafe. When my birth name was called, suddenly, I wasn't just the woman in the waiting room. I was the woman with the man's name. I felt like all eyes were on me. Like everyone was talking that I was a weird, that everyone was thinking that I was a weirdo or a freak. I knew I had to eat it up to keep my cool. If I went off, I would draw even more attention to myself. A few months before living at Alley for Name, I went to a Social Security office in the Bronx to have my gender marker changed from male to female. Doing so offered me an added sense of security and affirmation, and it gave me a much needed sense of privacy. If I hadn't changed my marked gender, anytime I had to show my ID at the bank, at the bar, to a police officer, the fact that I'm a transgender woman would be made public for all to see. In addition to ensuring my security and privacy, I needed my gender marker changed because I was finding it difficult to pay out of pocket for hormone therapy. My health insurance would cover it only if my marked gender was female. Dr. Raquel explained to me how to go about making the change. And I brought along with me all of the required documents, including a formal letter from the explaining that I was transgender, that she had been treating me for so many years, and the gender marker in my records should reflect my gender identity, not the gender I was assigned at birth. It had taken me a lot for me to muster up the courage and to go to the Social Security's office that day. As a trans person, even though I know my rights, I always anticipated the worst in situations like those. I feared that I would have to interact with an individual who thinks that being transgender is a choice or doesn't believe. I'm sorry. I fear that I would have to interact with an individual who thinks that being transgender is a choice or who doesn't believe that is a biological scientific fact. I feel that I will be confronted by someone who continues. I'm so sorry, I'm kind of nervous. I feel that I will be confronted by someone who makes comments that make me feel uncomfortable or unsafe. I fear that I will have to defend myself against someone who wants to physically harm me because of who I am. Unfortunately, that day after saying my birth name out loud, the Social Security agent looked at me and at my papers. I'm sorry, this isn't allowed. I cannot help you. What do you mean, I asked? All of the documents are here. There's nothing I can do for you. But I have. I'm sorry, I can't. I was shocked. I had everything necessary to complete this process. I couldn't believe that she was treating me this way. Can I speak to your supervisor? She sighed and called the supervisor over, and I got the sense she was relieved that she didn't have to deal with me. The supervisor came and I explained the situation. I showed him all of my documents and I told him that this was my legal right. I felt so proud for standing up for myself. It was like I was my own lawyer. When I finished speaking, he looked at his employee and said, "So what's the problem here?" She just sat there and said nothing. Finally, she made the change and gave me the paperwork I needed. Thankfully, that morning at Ali Fournier was different. "Hey, good morning," Ms. Kent said with a smile. "I want to ask, how do you identify? What are your pronouns?" Yes, I thought. This was the first time in my life someone had asked me these questions, and I was thrilled. I identify as transgender, and my name is Marizol. You can use female pronouns, she, hers, hers. Okay, great. It's nice to meet you, Marizol. The kids around me were listening, and Miss Kane laughed. They came up to me. "That's a pretty name," said one boy named Louis. He and I would become very close. He was gay and super feminine, and we always joked that he was my daughter, and I his mother. "Oh, thank you," I said. "It means ocean sun." "Wow," he said, "you definitely look like a Marisol." Chloe, another trans girl, approached me. Now I don't feel alone. I have one of the girls here with me. Yes, girl. I couldn't believe how easy it was or how natural this all felt here. Here I was with people who could not only relate to me, but also accept me for me, without any judgment. Up until this point, I had never been in a living situation with people who were so open and inviting. I had discovered who I was through other trans girls I met like Miranda, but because trans people often have to live on the edges of society, away from their families or support systems, a kind of survival mode can dominate many friendships. On the streets, I saw trans women betray one another or criticize each other about their looks or ability to pass as a cis woman. Because I was young and on my own, I was often afraid of being stepped on by the most experienced girls. I tried to learn from them and be accepted by them. But still, I kept my distance. But from the first moment I walked into Ali Fournier, I felt warmth, I felt support and love. Everyone was so welcoming and inviting. It felt like home. Soon after, I went to meet with my caseworker. I was waiting in the computer room where residents could work on their resumes or job applications. When I heard someone say Marisol, it was Natasha, my caseworker. Ms. K must have spoken to her, telling her not to use my birthday. Oh shit, I thought. Yeah, on point. I even felt more reassured that I was in the right place, that good things were going to come from my experience at the center. Natasha was an amazing influence in my life. She is the reason I was able to get my life together. She was always spot on with anything I needed with help. After I explained my situation, our relationship opened up, and she became not only my caseworker, but also my mentor. When I spoke to her about my problems, she gave me advice, always grounding me. Her presence was nothing but positive. She told me things like, "You are here for a reason," or "You are going to get your life together. Just keep doing what you need to do. I'll be here. Keep on track." I met with her every week, and every meeting she helps me further my goals. She helps me fix my resume, apply for jobs. She put me in touch with Marizol, an attorney from the Urban Justice Center, a nonprofit organization that offers free legal services, advocacy for those in New York City. Marizol would represent me at the hearing to get my name legally changed. And the Urban Justice Center could cover my court fees. In addition to meeting with Natasha once a week, the Ali Farming Center provided me with a foundation of support to begin living a stable, independent life. The center sets up a saving program for its residents, which every week you receive from a job or a government program. The centers withheld a small amount and deposited into a savings account for you. Then when you were ready to move out, you even had to put away or pay for a deposit on your own apartment. We were also required to attend group therapy. We were also required to attend group therapy sessions where we discussed our experiences with issues like discrimination and self-doubt. Before joining the center, I have never heard people speak so openly about their emotions. Hearing other people's stories made me feel less alone and also more sympathetic to others. It was reassuring to know that we were all going through the same things. But more than anything, I think being a part of a community like this gave me a kind of confidence I've never had before. We didn't really have any cattiness or bad feelings amongst us. It was always love and support. Being a part of my family so many years was lonely and difficult, especially around the holidays. But at Ali Farnay, we became like our own little family. And even when it was hard, or when I was feeling especially down and missing my parents and siblings, I knew others around me who cared. And for that, I will be forever grateful. I spent about a year at the shelter, and for much of the time, I wasn't really in contact with my family and friends in the Bronx. I spoke to my mom and sister on the phone occasionally, but I knew that I needed to go through this process of growth on my own. And I didn't want anyone to see me until I was ready. On my birthday, I decided to make the trip up to the Bronx to see my sister and Jackie. Going on the train always gives me anxiety. In general, entering any kind of public space causes anxiety. And I'm not alone in this feeling. Many of my trans brothers and sisters experience this too, because we are constantly mistreated, discriminated against, or harassed. We find comfort in the private spaces of our homes, where we can fully be ourselves. At home, we don't need to worry about what anyone is going to think or say or do. It is draining to constantly live like this, to worry every time you leave your house. What's gonna happen to me today? When I was living in Brooklyn and going back up to visit my old neighborhood in the Bronx, that anxiety was always present. And the closer I got to the area where I grew up, my fears became worse and worse. What if someone recognized me? Will they call me on my name? Am I gonna get spooked? A few days before my birthday, Jackie has sent me a message. It's your birthday, come by, I wanna see you. When I got to her apartment, she and her parents greeted me with a present and a cake. Even though Jackie and I had our ups and downs, I loved her like she was my own sister. God knows that we fought like it too. Her parents had always been welcoming and accepting of me. And when I lived with them, I called them mom and dad still. I've never expected them to do something like this for me. I thought this birthday would be like all of the other birthdays I've celebrated with my family. Nothing special, just another day. I was so touched and I started to cry. After a few hours with them, I went over to my sister's house, Selenis, and had a gift. I went over to my sister's house. Selenis had a gift and a cake for me too, but I couldn't stay long. The center has strict rules, including a 6 o'clock curfew. Including a 7 o'clock curfew, and I needed to be back. I hugged my sister, thanked her, and prepared myself for the long train ride back to Brooklyn. I got back to the center just in time. When I walked in the door, everyone yelled, surprise! Arroz con gandules, Puerto Rican style barbecue chicken, and a birthday cake were all set up. And a big mallard balloons that said, happy birthday, hover nearby. They even had a few gifts for me. Louis had put it together, cooking all the food and getting all the other residents on board. He and I were close, but still, I couldn't believe that he would do something like this for me. I spent so many birthdays alone or with people who didn't care much about me. And this year, I had 3 different cakes. I teared up again. I was so happy to be there. And I was so appreciative of being a part of this caring community, I didn't feel alone. I felt safe, I felt understood. On the way out, on the way to court to get my name legally changed, I had butterflies in my stomach. I was nervous, but I was happy at the same time. Once I received the court order, I could have both my gender and my name on my documents be true to me. Then I wouldn't be embarrassed or afraid whenever I had to show someone my identification. Yes, finally, I thought. I met my attorney, Maurice, who was there with a few other trans girls who were getting their name changed as well. She asked, "Are you ready? Are you excited?" "Yes, girl, I'm so excited." Once she filed the paperwork, we sat in the courtroom until the judge called us forward. The judge was older, a white man with gray hair. And I'll admit that I was intimidated by him. I was afraid of what he could think of someone like me. But when he called us forward, he was nothing but kind. And he calls me by the right name. He told me congratulations, and I said thank you. And then it was over, just like that. When I walked out of the courtroom, I felt like a new person. I was so happy. You have thought I was walking down the aisle of my wedding day. I was laughing and smiling. "Oh my God, Maurice, thank you so much." I threw my arms around her and gave her a big hug. "Of course, Marisol. This is a big day for you." Yes, it was. But it wasn't the end of the process. I still had to go back to the Social Security office and to the DMV and to the insurance company, and I still worry about the kind of mistreatment I might face. Unfortunately, the second trip to the Social Security office was no different from the first. Another judgmental look, another "I'm sorry, I can't help you." This time, though, I didn't have the energy to defend myself. I was drained. So I called Natasha, and she demanded to be put on the phone with the supervisor. After I handed the supervisor the phone, I could tell by the face that Natasha was more off and letting her have it. It is against federal policies to treat transgender individuals this way. Social Security employees, for example, must treat you with respect and fairness. They must use your preferred pronouns. They must use their preferred gender pronouns and not to ask inappropriate questions. And even though government office provide training for federal employees, many employees refuse to follow the mandatory protocol. When she hung up the phone, the supervisor apologized. She gave me my paperwork, and then I was out. But that wasn't the last step. I still had to change my name on my ID and with my insurance company. And each errand stirred up anxiety that still gets to me to this day. Is someone going to say something? Is someone going to spook me? Will someone deny me service because of who I am? What frustrates me is that I'm not asking the entire world to accept me. I know there will always be people who think that my identity is something unnatural, or that I just woke up the morning and decided to live this kind of life. But this is not a choice. It's something that my trans brothers and sisters have to live with every single day of our life. And we could choose to hide, or we can choose to be ourselves and live in our truth. It is not easy being trans. I've often thought about how much easier things would have been if my physical body had always matched my mind and soul. When I was growing up, I wished that I could just wake up as a girl. Now, I wouldn't change who I am for anything in the world. Being trans has taught me things most cisgender people have never had to face. I value my perspective and insights, and I am proud of being part of such a resilient and creative community. So acceptance would be nice. What I'm asking of the world is that they respect me and everyone who is a part of my trans family. Treat us like no other human being who comes through the door. Our life is just as valuable, and our rights are just as valid.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Amazing, so emotional.
Absolutely.
Hard time reading through that because it was like all of those emotions were like they were all reliving again. I was trying hard not to like bust down crying, but thank you guys for listening. Appreciate it.
Thank you for sharing. So
having you read that just brings so much clarity to that chapter in the book. It brings it alive when you're reading it. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have a question. My name is Brenda. and it was a pleasure listening to your book. I chose to download the audiobook. Watching Orange as a New Black, Selenis was actually a friend in my head, so I decided that I wanted so that I could borrow Marisol from her, and also she could be a friend. Which process do you think was harder, the audio book or actually writing the book? Because you had to relive it, recording the audio book. So Marisol first, and then Selenis. Which process you think was the hardest?
Oh, wow. I think, well, first of all, hello, Brenda. I think for me, they both were hard because I've never been in a studio before, but I do consider myself a creative artist. And so it was the very first time being in that type of space, and I had a blast with it, even though a lot of the moments I had to relive again in the audio. So it was like kind of like, oh my God, I'm kind of scared of that. But I did it, and it was super liberating. I felt actually free. I felt like this was like the last part of the project. And so it was just like almost like the celebration of the closing of our project. So that was that for like the audiobook part of it. And the process of like writing the book, that was very hard. I had moments where, you know, I had to start therapy for this, because I needed to really just get into my feelings and emotions and understand them. Why am I feeling this way? Where are they coming from? And so I needed to understand that. And so that helped me a lot with therapy. And so there were many things that I just started putting together, and everything just started making sense. And it was just like crazy that I was overwhelmed. And there was like at least 4 moments where I had these moments where I just felt like I wanted to go back into the cycles that were not serving me any justices as far as like coping mechanisms and stuff like that. So for me, I finally was able to like say, no, I'm not going back into those spaces. I'm going to look into these emotions in the mirror and deal with it and sit there with them. And so that was like the hardest part, to sit there with those emotions and accept them and be in them.
I think that, yeah, I think definitely writing the book was harder for me, because things were raw, a lot of stuff was being revealed, things that I wasn't aware of. So emotionally, I would say that writing the book was a lot more difficult than the actual going into the studio. The studio for me, it's where I feel comfortable, you know. You give me a script, I'm comfortable with that. The difference here obviously was reliving. And it's quite interesting what happens. It's like you write the book, and then you walk away for a couple of months, and then you're like, oh, you have to come back to the studio now and now read the book. And I think that the challenge that I found reading the book was keeping myself from crying, from bawling in particular moments. Yeah, I think that was the hardest part, was keeping your composure so that the entire book wouldn't be just me cracking. But definitely 2 different experiences. But for sure, writing the book was harder. But thank you for getting the audio.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Brenda.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I have the audio too, and it's a different experience from just reading it.
Yeah.
I have a question, kind of a humorous question, Marisol.
Yes.
How much partying did you do when you got that 18 grand? Because I know part of it went to, your transition, but the way it read, it's like a lot of it probably just went to you hanging out.
Mm-hmm.
And will we ever know the true extent of the partying you did?
I mean, I think the book pretty much gives you the idea of how much partying I've done. I mean, if you really look into the experience of like LGBTQ plus community members, like a lot of us fall into partying, drugs. That is the space of us being able to like there's no safe spaces, right, for us to be able to deal with our issues and everything that's going on. Like it's just like everything is a rush instantly. And so for me, like a lot of the money spent was just like on partying and shopping and like treating everyone else so I can fit in and people can like me. And here I am still finding myself. I don't know who I am 100%. I know where I want to go, who I want to be, but it's like, how do I make those steps? And so at the same time, I also felt the people around me were my friends, but it felt good because they were part of my community. Mm-hmm. And so like there was some type of like
connection,
safe space. It was weird, you know, but I've definitely done a lot of partying.
I had a question. I had a question about joy, actually. That Marizol, something that stood out to me in the story was when you organized that party at that little spot in your neighborhood in the Bronx. And to me, you know, also queer growing up in New York, and you talk about in the book having to go all the way downtown to Christopher Street and all those little spots, that it just stood out to me that you were able to make it happen in the Bronx, that people came out from the street, from the neighborhood or whatever, that may have had to do that same journey of going all the way downtown, those long ass train rides at whatever time of the day. That I'm curious, one, of if you could talk a little bit more about that experience, and also what does it look like now? Like, how do you create those spaces now? What have you been up to now?
I love that question. Thank you, Cleaver. When I put that together,
I can't believe he's here. That's
yeah.
I'm sorry. This is hi, Cleaver. Okay, we have to, and then I'm gonna let Marizol speak, but I have to shout this human out because we met when we were going around meeting editors and book houses and publishers to write this book, and Cleaver was sitting in one of those rooms. One of the rooms, and his personal note, handwritten note to myself and to Marizol, made us go with the publisher that we have today. So
shout out to Cleaver.
Yes. Anyway, thank you. Much love, because your authentic words really made us, and we had a couple of people that we were going back and forth with, and I was like, nope, this is the place. If this place has him, I want to be here. So right. I just wanted to say that. Now I'm gonna shut up. Okay, go.
Thank you for that.
Really quick go.
I think the question was about joy.
Yeah, it was about that moment of you really making it happen. I guess I'm saying that really stood out, that it just shows like we don't have to always go to these far places, and that even in taking that risk, that you open the door for so many other young queer folks to have a space within their region, their neighborhoods.
Yeah, so for like, I remember like the idea of that, of like where that came from, is like knowing that we had to travel to go to these spaces and party and stuff and like be with your friends and stuff. And being that this location is where I had my Sweet 16 at, it was just like, oh, why don't I have it here? Like, you know, there was like so many people that identify with the LGBT community in my neighborhood. Like many of them, I went to school with them that end up like coming out as well, or just like another town down from my town. So I wanted to bring something that was in our neighborhood where we can also go and have fun as well. But I never imagined, like I literally thought like it was gonna be like my 16th birthday where nobody really showed up. It was just like my family and like the close friends, the neighbors, and that's it. And no one from my school showed up. That was kind of heartbreaking. So I kind of like felt like, well, I have a community that I know so many people now. I know they're gonna show up. But I also had the anxiety of like, oh my God, what if no one shows up? So I kind of like wanted to prove myself, like I can make something, people will come and show, like they will show up for me, and not only for me, but just like for everyone, like for the community. And there was, even though there's so many stigmas amongst our community, we show up when it's time to show up. So you know, I couldn't believe the whole place was over capacity. People were trying to like jump in through the windows from the back, like trying to get in because nobody could get in. Like the bouncers would not let anybody in anymore. They had to shut down the party because it then became crazy. But it was definitely amazing. That's where I met my my first boyfriend. So yeah, but now the spaces that I'm creating now is just about like continue to share my book and my story and to build conversations, whether it's on Clubhouse, on lives, and interacting with other brands and having to share our stories. So just continue to do the work in the creative art aspect while I continue to be able to share the message at the same time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clever, I'm sorry.
Do we have any more questions?
I have a question. Do you guys see another book somewhere down the line in your future?
I do. I think, well, me and my sister do definitely see a book. I know she wants a children's book, and I want a cooking book.
Yes. The answer is yes. I think that it's one of those things that is given, you know, once you do it, you realize, oh my goodness, I could do this. So definitely for me, I do see a children's book in the near future. And I have other stories to tell about my journey as an Afro-Latina with a child that's not Afro and the things that we come across. So there's a lot of stories that I'm looking forward to sharing.
Nice. Marisol, you can cook?
Yes, I can cook. I love to cook. You already know I got the sofrito on deck.
She's a great cook.
You have to follow her Instagram to get the full breadth of what Marisol's life is like, because she'll put the camera up as she's stirring food, things like that. So
You've been doing some homework.
Yes, I have. I like to eat.
I love that.
But it's a good experience because she's not only talking about her personal life, but she's sort of connecting it to what she's doing professionally, as well as connecting it to the different causes that she's working with. So that's like the most important thing. We want to thank, any more questions before I wrap it up?
I had another question, yeah.
Hey, Willie.
So I know you guys, you ladies both explore identities, right? So, and being that this is one book, one Bronx, what would you say about the Bronx impacting your identity?
I love that. I love the fact that we're from the boogie down Bronx. Always a Bronx girl. That's what I say. Always, you know, I'm currently living in the West Coast, but I will always be a Bronx girl. I love the authenticity of that borough, of our borough, you know, a true melting pot, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you think of the Bronx, like I just think of home. I think about, you know, growing up, knowing everybody in the neighborhood, music playing, family, a sense of real family. And I think that, you know, the Bronx gets this bad rap, you know, for being like, I don't know, like burning buildings, you know, the idea that Hollywood created years ago. But the reality is that it's a place full of so much art and life, vibrancy, and so much talent. Not for nothing, right? But it's just it's a place where there's creativity and it's right. It's like authentic. So for me, Bronx will always be home. You know, you can never take the Bronx out of this girl, ever. It's a place that has fueled who I am and created, and the Gloria Mendoza on Orange is the New Black was an homage to the women that I grew up seeing in the Bronx. She was everybody's mother, everybody's caretaker, everybody's aunt, everybody's daughter. So that to me, Gloria Mendoza was an homage to my Bronx and to the women of the Bronx.
Yes. For me, you know, being that, you know, us Bronx, we have very strong exteriors. We could definitely handle whatever comes our way. And I think one of the things that helped me with my gender and identity is that no matter what, I still face the hood. Like, even though if you was going to say something to me, like, or call me out my name or misgender me or discriminate me, I was still walking through them streets. So I think that being from the Bronx, you have this exterior, like, no matter who you are, you still from the Bronx, so you can't tell me nothing. So I think that energy, I think it's the energy, that Bronx energy. And you know what I mean. If you're from the Bronx, you know what I mean. So it's definitely the Bronx energy that helps me keep strong and keep resilient and not really give a fuck. And yeah, shout out to the Bronx.
Shout out to you, both of you. So we want to thank Selenis Leyva Marizol Leyva. Their book is My Sister, How One Sibling's Transition Changed Us Both. We've been reading the book for the past 3 weeks. We enjoyed tonight, both readings. Thank you so much. Next week, Wednesday, we are going to read to the end of the book. That is chapters 26 through 30. We're actually going to discuss those chapters, but we'll also talk about tonight and, you know, the fun that we had tonight. Thank you, Gail from Casita Maria Center for Arts and Education, Brandon Janice, who facilitates these conversations for us. Thank you so much. Thank you, Cleva.
Yeah.
So, I'm not going to tell Cleva's whole backstory, but Cleva's like a bon vivant. Wherever good stuff is happening, Cleva is there. So thank you so much, Cleva, for your question and for your connections also to this, to the authors and the book and the book club. So next week, we'll see you again next Wednesday, 7 o'clock. Thanks again, Selenis and Marizol.
Thank you.
The next book,
Yes,
we're waiting for your next book now.
So much, you guys.
So
And
we'll
also,
come.
if you
Yeah, thank you.
also, I would like to say, if you guys would want me to join for the remaining last chapters, you guys, I'm down to come through.
Come next week.
We'd love to have you.
You can come every week.
Yes.